Hello everyone. Um, Long time no see. I hope we've all had a good, well, I guess month since we've seen each other. Um, Really, I do want to kick this meeting off with just to thank you guys for joining us today. And then Lillian and John have an update for us. I think we're just going to go ahead and hear that from them.
Yeah, thanks, Bentley. I'm actually going to pass to my colleague John, who's been the lead on this particular project. We have mentioned it at a previous meeting, Kentucky Innovation Guide. It was a resource that KnowledgeWorks was creating for the Kentucky Department of Education, but really a way to bring to life some of the rich work that's happening in districts across Kentucky from the lens of how they are leveraging policy flexibilities to advance innovative learning models. So wanted to share that resource now that it's complete and getting ready to launch on the website. So John, I will pass to you.
Thanks, Lillian. Hi everyone. Good to see you all again, and really excited to talk here for a moment about the opportunity or the innovation guide. So, this resource, I will say on the front end, would not be possible without the tremendous engagement from the Kentucky Department of Education, as well as the tremendous work that the department has already done to help articulate the various policy flexibilities that are available to schools and districts across the state. We worked very closely with folks in the Office or Division of Innovation, including specifically David Cook and Sarah Snipes, who helped us with pretty much every step along the way, as well as various other folks at KDE. So just really want to make sure to shout out. This is very much a team product and is also a product, I think, of all of the great work that's really been going on in Kentucky. And I know I, for one, just really feel privileged to have been able to share some of the great work that's going on and help translate some of that. So just as a quick background, the innovation guide, which is not officially public yet, but I'll share my screen here in a moment so you can just kind of generally see what it looks like, is a product that we have now either created or are in the process creating for 3 different states, and Kentucky is, one of the first. So Kentucky, when we started working on this, the process that we went through, we really wanted this guide to reflect what schools and districts, what their priorities were, what their questions were. So we started with some focus groups with school and district folks from across the state. Through those groups, we identified the types of flexibilities that schools and districts were interested in learning more about. And then through those flexibilities, we started working with the Division of Innovation to identify who are the right districts and the schools to innovate that really illustrate how schools and districts can engage with um, innovative practices across Kentucky. So all of that got rolled into this resource, again, titled an innovation guide. And really the way to think about this, it's a guide that answers that question of, what does innovation look like? How might you innovate? And then what's the pathway to moving forward with it? I would say, as a generalizability, it's about 80%, examples, 20% policy. So it's really meant to kind of be an inspiration in a lot of ways to schools and districts, but also to highlight those areas in which policy allows schools and districts to tackle that innovation. So sharing my screen here just to give you a quick teaser of what this looks like. This is the front page of the guide here. So it's very much formatted within Kentucky's pretty typical structures. You can see here, this is how it's organized. We talk about the portrait of a learner, some of the framing around the School Council work that's been taking place, give people an idea of how to use the guide, and then start digging into these action areas where folks can innovate. So we've got several areas here that should be very familiar probably to this committee. Portraits of a learner, local assessment accountability, effectively using funding to support personalization, grad requirement flexibilities, credentialing learning, and then rethinking teacher certification and professional development. So just clicking on one of these areas, for example, creating portraits of a learner. The way each of these sections is really structured is thinking about what is this and how might you go about doing it. We then transition into state policy connections so that folks can understand a bit more about what's already going on in Kentucky. For example, we really highlighted that Kentucky doesn't currently have anything requiring adoption of a portrait or preventing anyone from doing so, but also highlighting that state portrait, and then some of the resources that Kentucky has put out to support schools and districts in doing that, as well as other things they should keep in mind, like adherence to Kentucky academic standards in certain areas where it makes sense to do so. And then I think the most fun that we had with this guide is the last part of each of the sections, which is spotlighting one or more districts that are doing some fantastic work in this space. So for this one, for example, we chose to highlight Jefferson County Public Schools. We interviewed some folks from the district as well as Fayette County Public Schools, and then wrote up their story as it relates to both the Portrait of a Learner work and their innovative work more general. So when the full guide comes out, you'll see, again, a number of areas along those lines, a number of those stories really highlighting schools and districts that are probably going to be familiar to folks on this call that have been engaging in innovation work in Kentucky for the past, several years, or even going back a decade in the case of Eminence, which I learned all about in doing research for this guide. And I know we're really excited to hopefully help this see the light of day and get out in the world in the not too distant future. So we wanted to pause here, see if anyone had any reactions, thoughts, or questions about the guide. Or I know there have been some communications pieces kind of working in the background. Lillian, did I forget anything, or is there anything else that needs to be shared around the guide?
Yeah, no, I just thanks, John. That was a great overview and sneak preview. We'll email around the final PDF document to all of the members. As John mentioned, we're still in the process of working with the Kentucky Department of Education to get it up online. So there will be a link on the department's website soon. But want you guys to have that sort of sneak preview, because I know we've heard over and over again how the district stories are so important. We want to anchor this work and what we understand districts are really leading the way around. So I just also want to kind of help frame a little bit of some of our thinking in creating this resources. A lot of times in states, we're always so focused on policy change, right? Like what are the barriers? What do we need to implement a new law or regulation? When the reality is sometimes there's like incredible policies on the books that are just not being maximized in the way that they could be. And some districts have figured out how to maximize that. And that's where those amazing case studies come from. And others don't even know what's possible, right? Because the last place they're looking on a busy day is trying to comb through, their state department's website and figure out what the code allows them to do. So this resource is really meant to think about that policy implementation space. Let's do the absolute most that we can with the current policy environment while we continue to look forward at future change as well.
Thanks, Lynn. The only thing I'd add on top of that is it's a good reminder. In doing a lot of research for this guide, we found, I think the point you were making there is that most of the schools and districts that we've interviewed, they've been able to do a lot of fantastic things all under the existing policy structure. Now, that's not to say that there isn't the potential need to transform policies or further clarify things around implementation, but there is a tremendous amount that Kentucky schools and districts, I think we found, can really do under what's already out there. So really, really fun to do. I think a lot of really good inspiration, hopefully, for districts around the state that are looking to do innovative and transformative things. Any thoughts or reactions from folks?
I think it's a great guide. I just put it in the chat so people can take a closer look at it. And very well done. I really like the focus in the beginning on giving district concrete guidance on, even though how they determine what the portrait of the learner is going to look like will be unique district to district. It's good for them to have guidance, because still there's a lot of ambiguity. It seems like the term is a little ambiguous. What do you mean when you say portrait of a learner? So I think that having that guidance in the document really is going to help propel innovation. And I think it's a great document. Very, very well done.
And thank you for spotlighting. We didn't know it was officially live, so that's great.
Renee with the inside scoop. That's fantastic. So there's the link. Saves us an email later too. We will still email it around for everybody, but it's nice to have that link available. So thanks, Renee.
You're welcome. And very well done. Very well done. I like it. I love it.
Well, it's as John said, all the credit goes to the district leaders who took time out of their busy days to give us these stories, right? And the stories are in their hands. They know better than anyone how they're navigating the policy environment to get done what they know needs to happen for students.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'm-
John and Lillian, I'll just say, I appreciate the work because really the heavy lift is going to be trying to scale this kind of work across the state. So, giving people a real picture and a roadmap will be important. But sounds awesome.
Yeah, and Jim, I think a really good point that brings up is this work actually started in a state not too far away from y'all, South Carolina. And when they originally reached out to us about doing something like this, similar to Kentucky, and I think they may have actually, don't quote me on this, they may have modeled their Office of Personalized Learning off of the Division of Innovation, but they were trying to figure out, how do we scale this work? We have all these flexibilities. How do we let folks know what they can actually do and inspire them to take actions? So I think, Jim, what you said, that's exactly the point of it. And to Lillian's point, there's also the real valuable and important need for the implementation and the next steps. So I think it's super important to be able to then, take this and then get it out in the field and help folks start to see what's possible and what's being done in schools and districts around the state.
And maybe we can use the opportunity of our meeting in April, because we'll be in Bowling Green, and maybe we can have some opportunity to even do a presentation. And I know with cost and everything, but even if we had a few of the guides available in print form, even though the link is right there, so that we can start getting this document in the hands of people, and so that they can see ways. Because Bowling Green, and especially if we work through the co-op in the area, that will bring together a good 30 districts or so that are in close proximity. And so if we can use that as an opportunity, especially with our building bold new futures with communities, if we find a way to have a community opportunity for conversation in Bowling Green, I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah, Renee, I love that energy. Flagging for folks. Karen was listening. Karen Dodd was listening and flagged that we're in Frankfort, not Bowling Green, in April. But to your point, Renee, I think
we're not in Bowling Green?
No, I guess that means travel plans are different.
That's fine. But in Frankfurt, okay, well then we're centrally located. Bluegrass, we have there's a co-op in the area, and again, we're bringing together a large group of districts. When you think about all the contiguous districts to Franklin and Fayette, we still have an opportunity to do outreach. But I could have sworn we were supposed to be in Bowling Green. I just missed that.
Yeah,
So
no.
I do think that was entertained so that we would sort of have some geographic distribution of the meetings, but I think for logistics and cost, they opted to meet again at Sauer. But you are right, Bowling Green was on the short list originally.
Renee has all the inside scoop.
No, I really don't.
Wanted to call out Roland's comment in the chat there, John. I don't know if you saw that. Seems like your comments about the other 3 states you're studying piqued some interest there, and kind of thinking about some of the similarities and differences, and got a +1 there from our chair. Curious if you can kind of speak to those comments.
It's a really good question. And now I will say, from a policy, both creation and implementation standpoint, from a personal level, doing these 3 guides and talking to, I would say between 2 and 3 dozen districts across 3 different states has really, I think, helped inform how we as an organization, even over the last couple of years, have been thinking about policy and the implementation piece. So I will not say that there's necessarily a formal plan at the moment to crosswalk them, but that is a really good idea. And thank you for planting that seed. And I think that that's something that we could definitely think about now that we've done this a few times.
Righto, are there more questions, comments, or concerns about the innovation guide?
Roland, I will just say really quick for those who are really enthusiastic and want to do crosswalk themselves. The third one is currently not live yet because it's still in production, but the first one that we did for South Carolina is publicly available, and you can actually view that at the link that I just dropped in the chat.
Okay, sounds good to me. So if there are no objections, I think we can move on to Tammy's
Hi,
talking.
Hi, happy
discussion
Monday, and
of talking points.
hopefully I don't freeze. I'll talk fast because I seem to have a freezing problem. It's a Monday, too many calls all at once. Anyway, what we wanted to just highlight for all of you, and unfortunately Edna couldn't be on the call today. Edna had a reach out from her local NPR station a couple weeks back to do they were curious about the moonshot and the VLE definition and some of the voting that had taken place, and wanted to follow up and find out more about that. So it gave us actually an opportunity to both dust off and refresh some materials that had been developed, I think it was about last spring, June, July timeframe. And in particular, these talking points, which I dropped the link in the chat a little bit earlier. And so what we created was kind of a genericized version of talking points should any of you or any of our co-council members be asked to participate in any kind of localized media interviewing, might have a talking opportunity at, for example, your local Rotary, Optimist Club, some platform or a place that you're involved in at a localized level. About a year ago, we talked about having a toolkit of communications materials, which was developed about a year ago and then kind of sat. So it was time to dust it off, also to realign it with some of the modifications to our thinking about the way that the three committees are operating since November and going forward, and in particular highlighting things like the moonshot and the definition of VLA and those sorts of things, so that you had the right sort of language or talking points, or at least conceptually. This is by no means a script, and the intention isn't necessarily that somebody just reads it as a script, but to kind of make it your own from an awareness perspective as to how folks are talking about the Cool Council, the three committees, the three big ideas, the alignment of those sorts of things, and how some of our go forward work will be very much closely aligned to the moonshot that was voted on by the full council. So I just wanted to highlight this for a minute so that you knew it existed, and make sure that you had it in your hands should you need to have that. Thoughts, questions, concerns, anything? Bentley, I think you're muted still. There you
Yes,
go.
sorry. I don't have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, so I am gonna. Does anyone else have questions, comments, concerns? No, I do think it will be good for us to have our just a general like outline for talking points for us all, so that way we're kind of like all on the same page over what exactly is us, if that makes sense. So I am delighted to receive that in due course.
And for what it's worth, our feedback, just to add from Edna post interview, was that she had a lot of fun, feels that it went really well. And my understanding is the station is actually producing the piece on it, and we haven't, Meredith, unless you got it, today. I haven't seen it yet. But it's the kind of thing that they produce a piece and might run it when they're doing education coverage. And it went so well that they started to talk to her about possibly doing a series related to innovation in schools and across Kentucky. There we go. Thanks, Karen. It will air this Thursday. See, we get real live updates on this call. That's great. So anyways, that there may be a series. And so Edna's going to keep us apprised of that, and we'll continue to support her in that vein. But I would also say, encourage you that if you do have opportunities to share the work of the Cool Council and the progress made within the first year plus couple of months with any of your both networks or media friends and things like that, just loop back to Karen, Meredith, and myself, and we're happy to support you in that. You're not going it alone, and we'll happily give you some pearls of wisdom of how to handle those opportunities.
And I was going to just brag on Edna and what a great advocate she is for this work. So we will certainly share the link once we have it. Oh, good. So Karen put the link to the webpage where the radio station will post the piece. But some of you who are in the kind of greater Moorhead area, you might be able to hear it on the air. So that would be exciting too. But we will share that once we have the official recording.
Okay, sorry. Next on our agenda is the work group update, which we will be hearing from John, Meredith, and Tammy, all three of you. And if I'm reading this right, that's also an update on the convening in April at the same time? Yes, okay.
That's correct. So I will go ahead and start us off and then pitch to John and Tammy to sort of give work group specific updates. But we wanted to share about sort of an exciting shift in how we're going to be working as a council moving forward. So you can tell that we're sort of moving from our sort of discussion, brainstorming phase into a more implementation phase with this work. That's evident in some of the products that our different committees have been churning out and some of the work that's been prioritized to date so far. So as we move to that kind of implementation phase, we realized that we really need to be thoughtful about how we use the time and talents of the council members. So based on the surveys that you all completed following the November convening and our own observation, we could tell that you want to spend your time doing work and less time talking about work. And we certainly want to honor that. We sort of did a test run of this new model during the November convening where we did work groups. And so we had an opportunity at that convening to consider a variety of different topics that were proposed. And we were able to kind of break across committees into those topical groups and spend some time in sort of focused conversation on those topics of interest. And so we again heard great feedback on that. Seemed like people really enjoyed being able to identify an area that either they had a great interest in because of their own expertise or awareness or prior knowledge, or it being an area that they wanted to learn more information. So we are going to kind of use that work group structure in a more formalized way moving forward. So a couple things. So what does that mean for you all? One thing that we are going to amend, we have previously referred to our committees as standing committees, which implies that they meet at a regular interval. And that, has been monthly so far. We have removed the word standing from our sort of description of the committees, and we're going to refer to the committees moving forward as just that, as committees. That can be convened when there's a particular topic that committee needs to entertain. Perhaps it'll be for updates about the work that's emerging from the work groups. Sometimes it'll be for there to be particular consideration of action items, so on and so forth. But it won't necessarily be that we meet every month, kind of the first week or two of the month. We also want to incorporate more KDE staff into the work groups. That's a comment that we've heard from our district partners, that they really want to be sure that our staff members are aware of the work, supporting it in their professional capacities, because they feel like that's really where we'll have the greatest chance of success if we have KDE staff aware and supporting the work. So Commissioner Kinney has charged us with being very thoughtful about pulling in KDE staff members from the various offices to help support the work groups moving forward. We've actually had a chance to observe the power of that in the policy work group that John facilitated. We invited several of our policy advisors to participate in that work group, and it really did strengthen the impact of that work group because we were able to glean the expertise that those policy advisors brought to the table and have that inform our recommendations, but it also helped us be able to share with them the perspective of the Cool Council members from those who are living these experiences in the field. So it really was a good mix of perspectives. So we're going to be inviting more KDE staff into the work moving forward. So we think that's a really positive representation of reciprocity, right? So that's really one of the key habits that we've been focusing on, where we're going to have all the players at the table, and that will only be positive impact moving forward. So we wanted to sort of preview how this is going to go in April. So our hope is that we'll have descriptions of the work groups out to the council members in advance of the April convening. In November, we sort of did real-time pitches of the different work groups, and people chose based on those kind of introductory descriptions. We're planning to have kind of an overview document, very much modeled after John's document that he created for the policy work group, that will provide kind of an overview of the topic that the work group will focus on, sort of what the meeting frequency would be, what interests or expertise you may want to have to sort of consider participating in the work group, and then just some additional information about, support materials that may help inform your decision in advance of the convening in April, so that you can think about where you want to spend your time, because during the April convening, we'll have a fair amount of work time in our work groups to sort of launch this endeavor in April in person. That being said, unless we get our cloning machine worked out between now and April, you'll only be able to physically be in one work group during the convene. However, moving forward, if there are several topics that you're really interested in and your calendar allows it, when the work groups meet in a virtual space, if the meeting dates don't conflict, you can be in more than one work group. So you'll sort of pick a work group, prioritize your participation in April with one work group, but then in the meetings that come after the April convening, you can attend all of them. You can also attend none of them. So that's another option. We really are trying to be respectful of everyone's time and the commitment that we're asking of you as council members. So if you determine that you don't want to participate in a council or in a work group, that's okay. You can still remain as a member of the council. Your input will still be very valued when we have opportunities to convene this committee at whatever interval we so choose, or when the full council comes together for those in-person convenings to provide feedback on particular products that come out of the work group. So there's still an opportunity to be involved, even if you choose not to do a work group. We hope you do, though, because we really think this will be a great way to focus our efforts. So as of right now, we anticipate that we will have a work group around engaging with communities. That is the work group that Tammy spoke about during our last meeting that we knew was of an interest of this committee to form. So kind of focused on being, thoughtful engagement with community members, which is a good lead into Tammy's charge that we want you to go out and use those talking points and engage with your community members. So that is a work group that is likely to convene. We also will have one around the system of systems. So we know during our last meeting, we had representatives from Accelerating Innovation who came to talk about the menu of options, what some of those recommendations might look like. So there'll be a committee or a work group that's focused on exploring those options. There's talk of having one that's focused on working with districts. So they will be more like what John spoke to with the innovation guide, hearing from districts and what they are doing in that innovation space and helping to promote that work to other districts as well. And then we have potentially a work group that's going to focus on sort of how do we build this repository of high quality deeper learning opportunities, and what would that look like to have that available to our districts. So there may be more, there may be less. By the time we get to April, we're still working through those descriptions. Certainly welcome your input if you feel like there's a work group that you feel like would be valued for the council, with the caveat that we don't want to have more than probably 5 or 6 work groups launching at one time. There is an intention that as we start on this journey, if it becomes apparent that we need to form a new work group to address a particular task, then that is going to be kind of the obvious next step. However, we don't want to have too many work groups launch at one time that we can't reasonably support. So you'll have those same external partners that have been supporting us will be sort of spread across the work groups, continuing to help. You'll have myself and the other KDE staff walking alongside you and all of your fellow council members. Potentially, we'll actively recruit some additional members to serve on the work group, similar to how we had the policy work group, so that we can be as intentional as possible, pulling together all of the critical players. So I will stop there. That was a lot of information, but we just wanted to kind of give you a peek into where we're hoping to go with this work. Hopefully this is positive news that you all will find exciting and that you all support. Happy to answer any questions.
Meredith, can you just speak again to when you expect these to roll out so folks know when
Yeah.
they'll see the final list and when there'd be the opportunity to sign up?
Sure. So officially, the bulk of the work groups will launch at the April convening. However, we're sort of soft launching is what we're calling this, a couple sort of time-bound work groups that will meet in March. So we have the Vibrant Learning Experiences committee. They're going to do some school visits. So that's sort of the preliminary activity that would kind of lead into learning from districts, that work group. And then also in March, the Accelerating Innovation Committee will be meeting with our L3 districts and doing some work with them to hear about the work that they're doing in deeper learning space. So some of this will be starting kind of through the month of March, but formally the committees will launch in April. So if we are on the ball, which we've got Karen on here to keep us on script, I hope early April we would be able to have the descriptions out. So Karen, I don't know if you have a different timeline, but so that people will have the month of April to sort of consider, and then we convene at the end of April. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, we're starting to work on those descriptions. So I've asked everybody within a couple of weeks to try to have those nailed down. So we may have them sooner, but certainly by the time those are rolling around, we'll have it.
Any questions?
And Meredith, I just wanted to underscore, since you used the policy working group as sort of an example of a past working group that has convened, as we messaged in, I believe it was our last meeting, that working group was sort of going on hold. But I would presume that that is a great example of one that would likely come back. When the window of opportunity is there, when we have a little bit more context around what potentially the system of systems design might be that's going to come out of that working group. So know that this is, that one is still very much in the works, but it's all about sort of seeing this work in a way that makes a lot of sense. So if you were serving on that working group before, know that opportunity may exist very soon in the near future, once we have a little bit more context coming out of those other working groups.
And I will add that, I think there's a real value that our committee can bring to these different work groups in a variety of capacities, because we've been thinking about this work from a different perspective than some of the other committees have, as we've sort of thought about the policy challenges and some of the implications of this work longer term. So hopefully we will have representation from BNF across all the work groups so that you can bring that policy perspective to the work that is underway in those specific work groups. So, but yes, we potentially will have a work group that emerges when it's time for us to start advocating for a particular system change. We'll need to be thoughtful about how we roll that out. So we are planning the visit schedule. So that is something that VLE is working on, registering from within their own membership. So I'm not sure, Karen, if that is open to other committee members to go on those school visits as well.
I think Sarah is planning to send something out. It depends. It's open to the VLE group first and foremost. She is checking with each of the schools to see how many people they can host. And if they don't have enough VLE folks signed up to max that out, then they will open it up to other committees to have a few people from other committees join.
So we will have an opportunity in a minute, once Tammy and John get to sort of add their input on the work groups, to provide feedback to the VLE committee as they think about those visits and some of the questions that we want them to be considering when they're in those schools. So that's up next on our agenda. So you will have a chance to help inform the content of the visits. It's really a capacity issue. We don't want to overwhelm our schools and have 45 people show up for a visit. Although I'm sure they would be happy to show you around. That tends to be a bit distracting to our schools when we do that.
Meredith, I don't know if you wanted to address Jessica's question about the group that AZRD formed. I think that was back last April when they talked about forming that All Means All group. What I recall is that was something they were going to do outside of the Cool Council. AZRD opened that up, saying that this was something that she was very interested in, and if there were others that were interested, to let her know, and they would form a group. It's outside of the scope of what the Cool Council is doing. So that is not being facilitated by anyone within KDE. That was something very separate.
All right. Any other questions for us before John and Tammy jump in? All right. Who's up? John?
I'll actually punt to Tammy first. If that's
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Coward. So let's see. So I don't have really much to share. I put in the chat kind of the sample write-up template that Susan Strange had sort of developed as an offshoot from, remember in January, we sent you sort of and shared the longer document that really put the engaging with communities work group sort of under the umbrella, if you will, of BNF. And I think it will still be under the umbrella from this work is happening, and certainly the charter of BNF is still aligned with the engaging with communities / policy work. But so just a little update on that one. Maybe this is like a sample, if you will, of how one of the newly defined, if you will, work groups from November is information kind of discussion. A group of us met, Karen, Susan, me, and somebody from the KDE communications team last week to kind of brainstorm what should this look like? Who might be useful and valuable members from within the KDE house? Should we reach out to others external within the community to be connected to this? And certainly thinking about Cool Council membership and those that were, opted in November. And we know that there were people that got assigned to different places that wanted to opt in to engaging with communities, but it was, a cloning challenge that we all couldn't be in different places at the same time. I had the same struggle myself. So, and Gretchen, thank you. Gretchen from CIE was part of this conversation last week. And so what we decided was that we would, first of all, reconvene probably give it a week and next week to continue the conversation. So the first and foremost is trying to determine the who's outside of the Cool Council network that would be valuable resources to be part of this work group. And secondly, one of the, we tried to fill in, if you notice at the top of this template, sort of what task or deliverable connects to this CGSA grant, like what could be an actual to do for this work group, because as Meredith was saying, the itch that a lot of Cool Council members are having is we've been doing a nice talking and studying the problem, but now we want to get in and actually do some worky kind of things and some of the doing part. So one of the ideas for a task that we came up with was to create, if you will, a library or repository of hearing from voices from our communities about specific topical areas that are of interest to the work of the Cool Council, meaningful to achieve the moonshot, and might be a good data, if you will, to inform work going forward connected to the moonshot. So as an offshoot task, Gretchen and I are going to gather actually the week after next on the 20th to brainstorm some interview questions that would then be shared with those members of the work group and anyone else that wanted to do this, to do, if you will, some empathy interviewing or freelancey small interviews with people in their networks to get some soundbite answers to important questions. For example, maybe one of the questions, and I'm just literally making this up, is when somebody says accountability system as it relates to education, what does that mean to you? And to get sort of a collection of hearing from the field what their opinions and voices are. And we felt like if we could get some of those started, even prior to the April convening of the Cool Council, that could be a useful data resource for some of the work that the other work groups might be launching even in April or soon after. So as a sort of resource library, if you will. Similar to some of the work of VLE and even AI, and John has shared this in our last meeting, this sort of menu of options that other states are using for their assessment and accountability system. That becomes like a resource or a reference bulk of material that we felt the Engaging with Communities work group could be sort of the reach out to the community to collect opinions and information and viewpoints that might be useful in the consideration of for example, the menu of options. So we thought we'd take that task on internally and then engage those who opt in to the entire work group to review them, edit, but it would be a starting point to get people like turned on and kind of something that they could react to instead of starting from like just blank slate. So that's what I have for now. Karen, do you have anything to add? My
No, you did good.
our co-lead contact. So this the form that I shared with you is the kind of like write-up that each of the work group leads would try and develop before, if you will, the pitch is given to the full council of here's our first start of work groups. Which one do you want to be connected to? At least when we're in person in April. And as Meredith said, you know, after April, since you can't clone yourself at a meeting and you can't be in two places at once, but virtually you can, that after the fact, if somebody wants to be working on two work groups at the same time and they have the capacity to do that, they're more than welcome to do that.
But our work group is going to come up with some really great treats to entice you all. So
Yeah,
there's that.
we're gonna be, you know, we're not proud, we're gonna be the best work group. So it's
Let the competition begin.
the most fun, because like talking to people is most fun. But that was just an example, and my point is, it's one task. We had like a laundry list of, these are thinking downstream for the life of the CGSA grant, how many, the word communications or the need to hear from the community or to have the community involved in the decision-making process as things move forward is threaded throughout the entire deliverable to-do list, if you will, of the grant. And so a lot of the work of all these work groups intercedes with the deliverables that KDE has essentially signed up for as part of the grant.
All right, John, that'll show you. We're pitching to Tammy first. Now you've got to follow up on that one.
Oh, Lord. All right. Well, so I don't have any fun updates for the future of said policy work group, but one thing we did just want to share as an outcome, both of the policy working group that we had previously as the BNF committee that is currently on hiatus, and also just some of the general impact that we are, I think, hoping that some of these work groups can have. If folks recall, there were two recommendations that the BNF committee had delivered to them by the policy working group this past fall. There was the one focused around funding, and then the second one focused around the Commonwealth education continuum and thinking about, are there ways to crosswalk the work that's happening in the post-secondary space in Kentucky with the work that is taking place in the K-12 space around the different visions for the knowledge, skills, and dispositions, and their various guiding documents for making sure that students are graduating ready for what they need to have come next. So we did get a very nice update. I believe it was this past Friday that the Commonwealth Education Continuum did select the P20 competency framework, articulating how the portrait of a learner, graduate profile, essential skills all align to each other. So just wanted to highlight, and if folks need a quick refresher, the original recommendation, as I'm looking on my other screen over here, was that the Commonwealth Education Continuum and the Kentucky Department of Education should co-lead a work group that should create a P20 competency framework that incorporates elements of the K-12 portrait of a learner, Kentucky's essential workplace skills, and the Council on Post-Secondary's education's graduate profile. So on some level, almost word for word, they adopted the basic spirit of this recommendation that came out of the working group that was approved by the council. So just wanted to spotlight that as a really, I think, bright spot of some good news and just a really good illustration, I think, of what the potential is for some of these working groups that can organize around a specific subset of issues and really think about, how to build the kind of detailed technical aspect of what might be proposed. So hopefully that is a good positive piece of news going forward, and maybe a motivator for folks as they think about which work group might I want to get into and how might we accomplish some similar levels of change to what we've seen as possible through the BNF working group that was established. See, Tammy just
And
gave me
good
enough time
job to
think through
Jessica.
my very good presentation here. So
Good job to Jessica for keeping up with that, because that was a lot and you talked fast, but she kept up.
Great updates all around. All right, Bentley, I think we're ready for the next item. Oh, Bentley, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm starting to, yeah. Anyway, our next item is VLE site visits and a feedback request. Now, I do feel like we kind of approached that already a little bit, but I'll take it to Meredith to approach it more.
So I will be brief. So as we mentioned, VLE is going to be doing site visits during the month of March, and they have asked for feedback on some of the data they should be collecting. I put in the chat a link to a Google document where they have asked us to help brainstorm some of these guiding topics. So they have sort of headers in blue, and then underneath in each box, you can add guiding questions, comments, whatever you feel like will help strengthen their visit. So that is something that we don't necessarily need to have time during the meeting right now to fill out, but please feel free to provide feedback when your schedule permits. If possible, Karen, do we know the deadline for that feedback?
I want to say February 15th, but I'm not 100% sure, but that might be a good target.
Okay, perfect. So a few days to think on it. And then Bentley, I think I'm up next. So on the vice chair election. So is it okay if I just jump into that? Okay, so we did not receive any other candidates who were interested in serving as vice chair. And the one candidate who did express interest was unable to join us again for this meeting. So I would like to propose to the group that we once again table the election of a vice chair and revisit it in person in April. So we'll actually skip March and in April talk about kind of the role of vice chair. As the charter is written, the vice chair should be shadowing the chair, and then they'll assume the role of chair in January. So we have Bentley through January, but we would like to have a vice chair who can sort of begin that process of learning the role of chair. However, we have a conversation coming up next where we're sort of talking about our committee and how we want to meet, the frequency. And so some of the responsibility of the chair and vice chair is changing a little bit with this new structure and sort of changing from standing committee to committee. So unless anyone objects, is it okay for us to table the conversation around vice chair till we can talk in person in April?
That is perfectly fine with me. I don't see any issues with that.
Okay, thanks, Chair White. We appreciate it. Okay.
If there are no objections to that, then let's try to identify a meeting date for our next meeting, which which we do have some questions regarding how we are going to establish our next meeting date. So really I have three main questions to ask. In everyone's opinion, how can we like best use our time? Like, how can you as a Kiel Council member best use your time and talents in the best way possible? Third is, do we as the BNF committee want and or need to even meet in March? And if we do, then what dates work best for everyone? And then third, starting in May, so after the in-person meeting, do we want to continue meeting on a monthly basis? And if so, should we spend the bulk of our meeting providing updates with efforts of the work group members that have joined other work groups? Or if not, then what specific committee work will we be doing? So that's the broad overview of all the questions. I will copy and paste them in the chat. And then I think it would work best if we just kind of go through them one by one and knock them off. So, first question, how can we all best use our time? Questions, comments, concerns? Anyone?
So Bentley, I'll share that I am really excited about the work groups because as Tammy alluded to, we're going to have kind of clear products that we're working toward and kind of clear objectives. And I think that'll be really helpful for us to sort of have that focused time with a clear goal. So I think that is for me and how I like to sort of think and work, I think that will be a welcomed change. I think that I'll speak on behalf of the support team for these committees. We want to be sure that when you log in, that you feel like it was worthwhile and that you got to learn something that you maybe didn't know before you logged into the meeting, and that you're able to contribute in a meaningful way. But that can be challenging in this structure because there's sort of two options where we overwhelm you with all the information that of all the things that are going on, or kind of that quick flyover. And we just haven't really been able to find that middle space where it feels like the right engagement, the right involvement, where you can bring forward your thoughts on the work. So, you know, there have been times when it's felt like at the end of the meeting, I've talked more than I wanted to, and we didn't have enough opportunity for the members, or that we just didn't really have something that I couldn't have shared in a different format. And so I really want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I think the work groups will hopefully work toward that end.
I agree with Meredith.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I do think I'm trying to word this as nicely as possible. Sometimes I feel like we do end up having meetings where it's the sort of thing that it's a better spent going through an email or a group me message rather than spending an hour and a half of everyone's time just talking about it. So if that's the approach we want to take, then at the rate we are going now, do we want or need to have a meeting in March before the April convening? Because I'm open either way.
I would propose, Bentley, that we not meet in March, and hopefully that will free up schedules for those who are interested in maybe doing a site visit if we're able to accommodate that. But also, if we're able to get the information out about the work groups, maybe you could use the time that we would have in this meeting thinking through the work groups, asking questions, and communicating with us kind of in a asynchronous space so that we can support everyone so that when we come in April, we hit the ground running. That would be my proposal.
Right, yes, I do agree with that. So we have, if no one objects, I think we're effectively scrapping our meeting in March. We will be having a meeting in April, yes, April for obvious reasons, Kill Council will be convening, etc., etc. So do we want to have a meeting after that in May? I personally think that is not a horrible idea because that meeting would give us a chance to basically debrief from what's happened at the convening. We give us a chance to cool down after and then establish where we're going from there. So if there are no objections, I do believe we do need a meeting in May.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Great. So are we wanting to establish the time for that meeting now, or do we want to wait until after the convening is over, or wait until during convening to establish a time for the debrief meeting?
Let's do it during the convening, and everyone bring your calendars, and then we can coordinate schedules in person, which is always my preferred way of doing it.
Yes.
In
Okay.
real time, decide.
So that sounds good to me. We are sticking a pin in our March meeting. Bye-bye. Say hello to an hour and a half of your time. And then we will see each other in April and decide what to do from there.
And please don't hesitate to reach out to us, though, certainly after you've digested the large
Yes.
amount of content that we threw at you today. And then when you get the communications from Karen and her team around the formation of the work groups, send questions to Bentley, Lily, and John, Tammy, me, to help you make sense of sort of what's being proposed and help you find the right space to consider for the work group. So we are available whenever you need us. Oh, and Lillian did just put in the chat a great reminder. So John, who is exceptionally organized and an outstanding note taker, has created a document sort of in response to the conversation that we had in January, where we have a few new members that we wanted to help support their onboarding to make sure they were sort of aware of the work that's been done so far with our committee. And we also wanted to have sort of a single place where we have cross-linked all of the different products that have come out of our committee. So John created something that we're calling the BNF Greatest Hits. And so that document has kind of by month, the kind of key topics that we entertained in our meetings. And then at the bottom, it has the documents linked in that you may want to reference. So thanks to John for being super organized and being a great support in that area. So we will email that out to you, that document, so that you have it to read and study and memorize. No, I'm just kidding. That you can pick on, and that actually would help with your talking points as well. So that is a good reference to have when you're talking about our committee specific. Oh, that could be a good use of the March time. There, look at Lillian giving us homework assignments. Thanks, Lillian.
Yes. So I kind of like, it feels kind of weird when all of our meetings keep running short, but it's like the best use of all of our time. So does anyone have any like questions, comments, concerns, updates, curse words, anything before we go? Like just anything to throw out there. Like,
Hey, Bentley, I might have one. This may be more of a Meredith, Karen question, but so most of us are aware there's a presidential election. And so I was kind of thinking about, we're looking for a commissioner. We have a presidential election. We have this grant that goes on, but I was trying to think about some implications in terms of our big bold ask and what kind of strategy is being considered in light of those moving parts that we're facing. Does that make sense, Meredith or Karen or Lillian or John? I'm just trying to get my mind around how we can navigate those and get some traction for some of the big prizes that we may be after.
Sure. So I don't know that. Oh, sorry, Bentley, go ahead.
can I clarify to make sure I heard this right? Basically, you're
Sure.
kind of asking what are the, based on current political happenings, what would be the political implications of what our work is and what we are, the outcomes
Well,
that we're wanting to do.
Yeah, and there's some open windows, but I just don't know how the timing's going to go for us. And so I know that some folks are probably thinking about that, and so I was just curious.
So Dr. Flynn, I think that is a great question and one that we will need to kind of grapple with in the days and months ahead, but I can just speak from the state board's perspective that they have been unwavering in their commitment to United We Learn and the priorities that have been identified by the Commonwealth, and fully intend to identify a commissioner candidate who will support the work that's already underway. So that is sort of their number one non-negotiable. They will find a commissioner who understands the United We Learn vision, supports it, and can help move it forward. So that commitment remains. I think we've been thinking through the timeline for, as we've started to talk about this system of systems proposal and the menu of options, and exploring what it looks like to start to develop a true proposal for consideration. When do we need to firm that up enough that we can start talking with the General Assembly about those potential changes, meeting with USAID about the flexibilities that they are willing to engage with us on, and when does all of that need to happen? So that is something that we're considering, and I think soon is really what what our takeaway is, that we are currently in the throes of a budget session right now, but we know that likely a new assessment and accountability system will need a budget appropriation. And so it will be, as the grant proposed, something that we would want the General Assembly to entertain in 2026. And so that really means that we need to be clear in our intent by the summer of 25. So we are getting closer to that date. And so, we've been thinking about what it looks like to have a plan in place that we can execute once we have our new commissioner, and are really not diverting from our mission. Karen, is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing to add to that.
I appreciate that. That makes sense. And we don't know what obviously, what the presidential election is going to bring, and probably, whichever way it goes, there's probably opportunities, no matter. But anyway, I was just kind of thinking about what that overarching, timeline might be, and how we can make sure we get the work that we're trying to get done, ready for that. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Our number one goal as those supporting United We Learn and the council is that we want all of these efforts to be fruitful and successful. We want to be sure that it was not an exercise in futility. We want it to be that we all invested our time and energy in this, and a positive thing came out of it.
Yeah, that's right. From aspiration to implementation.
That's right. That's right. Put it on a t-shirt. All right, Bentley. I have once again talked a lot, but I think we are at the conclusion of our meeting. You've done a wonderful job.
Yes, so I don't have a gavel, so we'll just say goodbye. Are there any objections? Like, does anyone have anything else to put out there? No? Okay. Toodaloo. See you. I shall go eat supper now.
Bentley.
Bye.